The moon isn't exactly the first place that comes to your mind when you think of oxygen. But what if we told you that there's enough oxygen on the moon's surface to keep humans alive? It might sound pretty crazy at first, but it's true. Let's take a look at how oxygen is produced on the moon and how we can use it to sustain life. At a time when scientists at NASA and other space agencies all across the world are looking for ways to utilize as many space resources as possible, the moon has revealed itself to be one of the more promising prospects we can look towards due to its proximity to the Earth. On Earth, the oxygen we breathe every day is everywhere in our atmosphere. We don't need to extract oxygen on Earth, since it's an automatic process that extracts oxygen from resources like oceanic plankton, rocks and other things. However, the atmosphere on the moon is nothing like this. Unlike the Earth, the atmosphere on the moon is incredibly thin, and it contains pretty much zero traces of oxygen. Despite that, there actually is oxygen on the moon. It's just not in the moon's atmosphere. Unlike the Earth, the oxygen resources that are available on the moon aren't going through a constant extraction process. They're pretty much limited to the rocks and minerals that are located everywhere on the moon. It's pretty similar to Earth. The rocks and minerals we find on the Earth are actually quite close to the ones you'd see on the moon. Aluminium, iron, silica, magnesium oxide. All of these minerals are present on the moon and all of them have oxygen in them. But this isn't the kind of oxygen we can breathe, it's in the form of a rock. All of these minerals, when put together, make up the moon's lunar surface. Keep in mind that this isn't the moon's soil. Soil is a term that's only used to describe the Earth's surface, since it's a process that took millions of years to complete. A more appropriate term to use for the moon's surface would be regolith, which is a layer of solid material that blankets a planet. Further inspection of the moon's regolith showed that up to 45% of it consists of oxygen, but as we've already mentioned, this is not the kind of oxygen that we can actually put to use, at least not in its base form. The oxygen is tightly bound to other materials, but thanks to modern technology, there is a way of extracting that oxygen. It just requires a lot of energy. We can do that through a process known as electrolysis, which is when we pass electricity through a substance to bring about a chemical change. For example, aluminium oxide is a material that is present on both the Earth and the Moon. All of the aluminium you see around you right now is a direct result of electrolysis. The aluminium oxide is liquidated, a current passes through it, and it causes the two main components of the material, aluminium and oxygen, to separate. While on Earth, we don't really go through this process to produce oxygen, since we already have plenty of it on Earth. But on the Moon, we would primarily be doing this for the oxygen. We could even find ways to put the aluminium to some good use. With all that said, it's not as easy of a process as it may seem. On the Earth, we have plenty of ways to generate power and electricity to actually power up the whole electrolysis process. On the Moon, there is pretty much no electricity. The limited amount of power you can take with you to the Moon won't be nearly enough to start the whole process. The greatest energy source that is available on the Moon is solar energy, and transporting all of those solar panels to the Moon would be quite a challenge, but all that said, it is possible. If not now, in the future, we will be able to utilize the Moon's resources. Sustaining any sort of life on the Moon was considered impossible for a while, and that was primarily due to the Moon's atmosphere, or lack thereof, being unsustainable. Since we can't exactly transport a bunch of oxygen to the Moon every single day for our colonies to survive, we will need to create oxygen from the Moon itself. The average person needs around 800 grams of oxygen a day, or around 292 kilograms of oxygen a year to survive. If, say, we're able to dedicate 1 cubic meter of moon regolith per person on our moon colony, each cube would contain around 1.4 tons of material, of which around 630 kilograms would be just oxygen. Hypothetically, if none of that oxygen is wasted at all, each person would be able to survive for around 2 years on the Moon. This would be enough to sustain a decent chunk of the Earth's population for a considerable amount of time. But what if we don't limit ourselves to just 2 cubic meters? What if we dug up to 10 meters of the Moon's regolith? Well, that would give us around enough oxygen to sustain the entire population of the Earth on the Moon for over 100,000 years. Keep in mind that's not financially viable at the moment, especially with the level of technology we are at right now, but in the future, maybe even the very near future, we may have a potential of setting up a successful colony on the Moon. So why would we need to even colonize the Moon? Well, the thing is, setting up a moon colony doesn't really mean we're going to send billions of people towards the Moon, but it does mean that we'll be able to do a couple of things. We'd be able to have more space for people to live, primarily. The Earth isn't getting any bigger, and our resources are only getting more scarce. To live in a moon colony while getting the Earth's birth rate to reach replacement levels would be one of the best ways we can solve our resource scarcity problem. The Moon is resource-rich, but extracting those resources and exporting them to the Earth is almost impossible. It's extremely expensive, and you'd be better off just trying to find alternative resources on the Earth. However, if there was a permanent moon colony where people would constantly be living and working together to develop the Moon, with regular flights going from the Earth to the Moon with the help of companies like Elon Musk's SpaceX, exporting resources from the Moon would end up being a lot more cost-effective, and one day we may even rely on Moon resources. The Moon can also act as a sort of space base for further space exploration. The Moon could even be set up as a material base for space construction projects, where construction material that is developed and processed on the Moon can be sent directly to these space projects. The lower level of gravity on the Moon makes the processing of certain materials a lot more efficient than it would be on Earth. For example, annealing, the process in which heat is used to soften or morph certain materials, can cause gas bubbles to form and burst when you do it on Earth. But in space, specifically on the Moon, this bubbling doesn't happen, leading it to require a lot less energy. Colonizing the Moon would also be the first step humans take before colonizing other planets and satellites. Since the Moon is a natural satellite of the Earth, it would make the perfect testing ground for all sorts of technologies and machines. Why do you think we landed on the Moon before we landed on any planet? It's because it's cheaper, it's more accessible, and it sets the benchmark for something that is possible for humans to achieve in space. The Artemis program is a US-led program that aims to increase interest in moon exploration. NASA is at the helm of this project, but it seeks to work with other space agencies as well as private entities like SpaceX and Blue Origin to bring it to reality. The Artemis program will have a cost of around $35 billion from 2020 to 2024. The first flight of the Artemis program will be by an uncrewed spacecraft known as Artemis 1, which is set to leave orbit in February of 2022. The first manned flight of the Artemis program won't happen until 2024, but it's set to be the first manned flight to the Moon since 1972, a 52-year gap. This would be one of the most exciting space missions in years, and the space mission that might actually start the whole colonization process in space. Overall, space colonization would just be an incredible feat for humans to accomplish. It would widen our scope of operations by 100-fold and open up some new possibilities for us. It would truly be the beginning of a new world, and the time when it may happen is not too far away at all. That's a wrap for using the Moon for oxygen. What do you think of the future of Moon exploration will be like? Let us know in the comments below. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Seema's Top 10 for more videos like this. See you in the next one.